It was an ordinary Wednesday morning, and we had woken up to the same mundane routine. Little did I know from that day, my life would change completely, forever. My wife Sarah kissed me goodbye on her way to work, her lips brushing against mine with the same tenderness I had known for years. I didn't question it. I didn't suspect a thing. But life has a way of pulling the rug out from under you when you least expect it. I was in the middle of a presentation at the office when out of nowhere, a sharp pain twisted in my lower abdomen. It was sudden, sharp enough to make me wince. I brushed it off at first, but the discomfort only worsened. By mid-morning, I found myself in the restroom, bracing against the sink, staring at my own reflection with a creeping sense of unease. Something wasn't right. I stood over the toilet, trying to piss, but nothing happened. The pressure was unbearable, yet my body refused to cooperate. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead as I strained, the pain intensifying with every second. Panic flickered in the back of my mind. This wasn't normal. I needed to see a doctor. I made an excuse at work, something about my kids and school, and managed to get the afternoon off. On my way to the doctor's office, I kept playing in my head all the worst-case scenarios of what could be wrong, but none of them prepared me for what I was about to find out. The doctor's voice was clinical, detached. "You tested positive for chlamydia." I blinked at him, feeling like the words had come from somewhere far away. "That's impossible," I muttered, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've been married for 15 years. I've only ever been with my wife." The words felt hollow even as I said them. A desperate part of me clung to the hope that there was another explanation, another way this could have happened. My mind raced, grasping at anything, contaminated towels, public restrooms, praying there was some innocent cause for this. But the doctor's expression remained unchanged, his gaze steady, as if he could read the frantic thoughts swirling in my head. "This infection is transmitted sexually," he said firmly. "You need to inform your partner. She should get tested immediately." His words crashed over me like a tidal wave, pulling me under. My stomach twisted. I could barely breathe past the sickening realization creeping in. There was only one explanation, and it shattered me. I stumbled out of the doctor's office, my mind fogged with disbelief. Each step felt heavy, as if the very ground beneath me had shifted. The doctor's words echoed in my head, a verdict I couldn't outrun. There was no other explanation, no room for doubt or denial. My wife, the woman I had cherished, trusted without question, and built an entire life with, had deceived me in the most gut-wrenching way. But fate wasn't done with me yet. At the pharmacy, when they handed me my prescription, another blow awaited. Nestled inside the bag was a bottle of medicated cream. My breath hitched as I stared at it, my stomach knotting with sickening realization. I knew this cream. I had seen it before, felt it before. Just days ago, my wife had introduced it to me, her fingers gliding over my member as she whispered, "It's a massaging cream," in what was meant to be a sensual massage. A slow, burning rage crept through my veins, mingling with the nausea twisting in my gut. I was confronted with two raging realizations. My wife had not only cheated on me, she knew of the chlamydia and was playing me for a fool. The drive home was a blur, my mind racing through memories, searching for the signs I had missed. Had she been acting differently? That's when it all came together. The late nights at work, the change in her work schedule, like working on weekends, the lengthy periods she spent on her phone. How had I been so blind? By the time I pulled into our driveway, my heart was hammering in my chest. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Sarah was in the kitchen, pouring a glass of wine as if it were just another afternoon. She turned to me with a smile that quickly faded when she saw my face. "What's wrong?" I clenched my jaw. "I need to ask you something." Her brows furrowed. "Okay?" I swallowed hard. "Are you cheating on me?" The color drained from her face, but she recovered quickly. Too quickly. "What? Of course not. Why would you even ask that?" I threw the clinic results on the counter between us. "You know damn well why. I've tested positive for an STD, Sarah, and I know very well I haven't been with anyone else." Her eyes darted to the paper, then back to me. Her hands trembled slightly. "That's not possible," she whispered, shaking her head. "There has to be some mistake." I scoffed, bitterness rising like bile in my throat as I threw the pack of prescription at her. "A mistake? You think I'm stupid, huh? How do you explain the stupid cream, Sarah? She hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. And then the lies came. I, I got that from my last visit to the spa. Don't insult me, Sarah. My voice was ice. Tell me the truth. Her silence was louder than any confession. I walked out before I could say something I'd regret. The betrayal sat heavy in my chest, choking me with every breath. My best friend Greg's place was a 15-minute drive away, but it felt like I was running on autopilot. My fingers gripped the wheel tighter than necessary, my knuckles white from the force. Greg opened the door before I even knocked. One look at me and he knew. "Shit," he muttered, "come in." I stepped inside, exhaling a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. He shut the door behind me and led me to the living room, where he grabbed 2 beers from the mini fridge and handed me one. I twisted the cap off and took a long swig before finally sinking into the couch. She cheated. The words tasted like acid. Greg sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Sarah? Damn, man, I'm sorry." I let out a humorless laugh. "Yeah, me too." For a moment there was silence. Greg just sat there watching me, waiting. He didn't push, didn't demand details. He knew I'd talk when I was ready, and I did. I told him everything. The doctor's visit, the prescription, the cream, the confrontation. By the time I finished, my chest felt hollow, like I'd emptied every last emotion into the space between us. "What are you gonna do?" Greg finally asked. I stared at the floor. "I don't know. I can't stay there. Not now. You can crash here as long as you need." "Thanks, man." That night, I ignored Sarah's calls and texts. Each notification felt like a knife to the gut. I wasn't ready to hear her excuses, her lies. Sleep didn't come easy, and when it did, it was restless and filled with fragmented memories of a woman I no longer recognized. The next morning, I waited until Sarah was at work and the kids were at school before I went back to the house to pack. The silence was suffocating. I moved quickly, grabbing what I needed and stuffing it into a suitcase. I picked up my phone and called my daughter. "Hey, Dad!" Lily's voice came through the phone, bright and unsuspecting. "Hey, sweetheart." My voice felt strained, but I forced myself to sound normal. "I just wanted to let you and Josh know I'll be away for a little while. Business trip." Josh's voice cut in. "For how long?" "A few weeks, maybe more. But you'll be back, right?" Lily's voice wavered slightly. "Of course." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I'll call every day, and we'll make up for lost time when I get back." They didn't question it. Maybe they were used to my work trips, or maybe they just trusted me. Either way, it was a relief not having to explain the truth. Yet, one evening 3 days later, I was just getting back to Greg's place when I saw Sarah's car parked out front. She was leaning against it, arms crossed, her face unreadable in the dim evening light. I sighed, gripping the straps of the grocery bags in my hands. Greg wasn't home, probably for the best. "I knew you'd be here," she said as I approached. "Good for you," I muttered, brushing past her. She grabbed my arm. "Damn it, James, you can't just run away from this." I yanked free. "Watch me." She stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "Please, we need to talk." I clenched my jaw. "Talk? Now you want to talk?" I let out a bitter laugh. "All right, let's talk. Why don't you start by telling me how long you've been cheating on me?" Her gaze dropped. "James, no. Tell me. How many times? How long?" She shook her head. "I can't or won't," I snapped. Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. "Not this time." "Yes," she whispered. "I cheated." Confession hung in the air between us, thick and suffocating. "Why?" My voice was raw. She swallowed. "I don't know." I scoffed. "Bullshit. You don't get to destroy our marriage and then say you don't know." She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the warm evening air. "I was lonely. You were always gone, always at work. I felt disconnected from you." I let out a hollow laugh. "Disconnected? I was working my ass off for this family, for you, and your solution was to spread your legs for someone else?" She flinched. "It wasn't like that." "Then tell me what it was like." She looked away. "I can't." Fury burned through me. "Because the details are too ugly to say out loud?" She exhaled shakily. "I don't want to hurt you more than I already have." "Too late for that," I said coldly. Silence stretched between us. She wiped at her eyes, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no desire to comfort her, just a deep, crushing disappointment. "I'm sorry, James, I still love you," she whispered. I stared at her for a long moment, then shook my head. "Yeah, you're sorry you got caught." I turned and walked inside, locking the door behind me. For the first time in days, I felt something close to relief, because now there was no turning back. A week passed. I stayed at Greg's, healing from chlamydia and from the betrayal that cut deep in my heart every minute of every day. I tried to make sense of it all, but I knew healing was going to take time. Then one evening, I went back home, hoping to see the kids. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, but I saw movement through the kitchen window. I stepped inside and stopped cold. Sarah and her boss were sitting at my kitchen table, plates of food in front of them, a bottle of wine between them. They looked up, startled. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, my voice low and dangerous. Sarah shot to her feet. "James, where are the kids?" "They're at my mom's," she said quickly. "James, just calm down." I turned to her boss, who was watching me warily. My blood boiled. Before I could think, I swung. My fist connected with his jaw, sending him stumbling back. "James," Sarah screamed, grabbing my arm. "Stop it!" Then something hit me. A scent. Familiar. I staggered back, breathing hard. The cream. The same goddamn chlamydia cream. It was coming from Sarah's boss. My stomach turned. I looked at Sarah, then back at her boss, who was rubbing his jaw in confusion. "Are you the one who gave it to us?" I asked, my voice ice, his brow furrowed. "What? Gave you what? What are you talking about?" Realization dawned on me. Poor guy had no idea he had chlamydia. Sarah had used the same trick on him. My rage turned to cold, numbing horror. She'd been with multiple men. I stepped back. Shaking my head, I turned and walked out into the cold of the night, my chest hollow, my mind screaming. It was over. That was the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. The next week, I found a real estate agent and secured an apartment. 3 bedrooms. 1 for me, 2 for the kids. I kept in touch with them, though I hadn't brought myself to tell them the truth yet. One afternoon, I picked them up from school, took them out to an early dinner, and told them that things had fallen apart between their mom and I, and that I wouldn't be moving back into the house. "I already know, Dad. I know Mom cheated on you," Lily said to my surprise. "How did you know?" "I'm not a kid anymore, Dad. I notice things, I hear things." I drew her in and gave her a hug. "It will be okay," I assured her. The news was much harder on Josh, but my assurance that they each had a room in the new apartment and that they'd be seeing me as often as they'd like gave him some semblance of comfort. Months passed as I navigated the wreckage Sarah had left behind. Healing wasn't linear. It came in waves, some days stronger than others. The anger had dulled into something quieter, a lingering ache rather than a sharp stab. But the betrayal never truly faded. It had just settled deeper into my bones, a reminder of what I had survived. Greg was my anchor through it all. Some nights we drank in silence, the weight of unspoken thoughts settling between us. Other nights he forced me out of the house, making me engage with the world again. He didn't coddle me, didn't sugarcoat things. When I wallowed too long, he called me out on it. "You lost a cheating wife, not your damn life," he reminded me one evening as we sat on his porch. "You've still got your kids. You've still got yourself. Now stop acting like a man with nothing left." And he was right. If there was one thing that kept me from drowning, it was Lily and Josh. I lived for the weekends they spent with me. Their laughter filled the empty spaces Sarah had left behind. I taught Josh how to shave, coached Lily through her first school dance nerves. We made pancakes on Sunday mornings, syrup dripping everywhere. They reminded me that I wasn't broken, I was just rebuilding. Still, some wounds ran deeper than others. There were nights I lay awake in my new apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I had let myself become so blind. I thought about the man I used to be before marriage, before Sarah. Somewhere along the years, I had compromised pieces of myself to keep our family intact. Now, with no marriage to hold on to, I had to figure out who I was again. So I started over. I picked up old hobbies, running in the mornings, playing the guitar that had collected dust for years. I spent more time with Greg, with my kids, with myself. Slowly, the weight on my chest began to lift. Then came the legal battle. I filed for divorce and full custody, not out of spite, but because I refused to let Sarah's recklessness dictate my children's future. She fought it, of course, claimed she had made a mistake, that we could fix things. But the court saw what I had long accepted. She had already burned our marriage to the ground. Months later, the ruling came in my favor. I got everything: custody, the house, my money. Sarah walked away with nothing but the consequences of her choices. The day the divorce was finalized, I stood in the empty master bedroom of my house, taking in the silence. There was no sadness, no regret, just peace. And while the idea of love didn't disgust me, the thought of marriage made me shudder. Some wounds I had learned never truly heal. They just become part of the man you learn to be. If you like this video, kindly subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Also, hit the notification bell so you get notified when a new video comes up.